Are you a rookie elk hunter? I'm Matt Hartsky with Backbone Unlimited, and in today's video, I'm speaking directly to the new elk hunter. Whether you've never punched a tag or if you've got a few close calls under your belt, I'm going to share with you the 5 things I wish I could teach every new elk hunter before they ever step foot into the backcountry. These are hard-won lessons from over 30 seasons of chasing elk on public land, and I promise if you absorb what I'm about to lay down, you'll cut years off your learning curve. Let's dive in. Everyone wants the glory shot with the bull on the ground, but what they don't see is the grind behind it. Here's the truth. Preparation is the only shortcut. For many, this boils down to a mindset shift. You're not training for the elk, you're training for the suffering. It sounds funny because we're doing something that we love, but elk hunting is endurance, decision-making under fatigue, and carrying weight over vertical terrain. What are the action steps you can take to prepare? Physical training. Start at least 3 to 6 months out. You can't start too soon. For me, it's a year-round game. Mixed rucking, trail running, stair climbs with carrying weight, right? And those are just a few of the options. Target at least 3 to 5 rucking sessions a week with increasing load. Nothing mimics pack carrying in the mountains like pack carrying. So try to shoot under fatigue, right? Practice drawing and shooting after burpees, stairs, body squats, after a long hike. Simulate real-world decision-making fatigue. For gear prep, try to get in at least 1 fully loaded, pack-loaded boots, carrying your weapon, hunt simulation a month in the lead up towards your hunt, right? So if you're starting 6 months out, you should get at least 6 of those in where you practice those things and you can figure out a lot of things that might go wrong with your system or preparation. And it's also going to help you know where every piece of gear is. Got to be familiar with it. Just makes it so much easier once you're out there. And we've got to work on the mental reps, right? You've got to visualize discomfort. You've got to embrace it. The hunt is probably not going to be quick or easy. You've got to accept that weather, animals not cooperating, and long hours alone as just part of the game. It's part of the suffering. Don't ask if am I in shape? Ask, can I suffer well? Am I prepared to suffer? That's the level of preparation elk hunting the backcountry demands. E-scouting is your hunt before the hunt. If you think you're going to wing it on opening morning, let me save you some heartache. You're going to waste half your season wandering around. And if you only have 10 days, ouch. E-scouting, it just isn't just about finding elk, right? It's about having plans when your original plans fail, right? Having a backup for your backup. Here are your action steps. Break down your unit. Using OnX to analyze elevation, terrain features, and any public-private boundaries, you want to look for 5 key features. So you're going to look for bedding areas, right? That's usually your north-facing timber, right? The dark timbered edges of those ridges that pop up on X. You're going to look for feeding areas, your opposite area, right? Those open meadows, burns, or low-lying grassy areas around creeks and boggy spots. You're going to identify where the water is, right? Or most likely areas of water. And then you're going to look for the transition corridors. What is a transition corridor? A lot of people throw that term around but don't explain it for folks. So for you new guys, transition corridor can be one of your best friends. That's the area between the feeding area and the water areas and their north-facing bedding areas, right? The areas in between, those are the transition areas, and they're usually moving through there, right? So an amazing way to hunt elk is to get into those transition areas early early in the morning and in the evening, and do some soft cold calling or no cold calling at all, and wait for those elk to move through those transition areas. I have another video I'll link to up there on how to use this tactic specifically, and it is my best tactic, my best kept secret, and one that I have used to kill dozens of bulls over the years. When you're looking at your OnX, you also want to make sure that you're noting escape routes. Where are the elk going to head if they get buggered, right? Probably going to be heading high somewhere. I'd also like to see you build multiple hunt plans. So have 3 to 5 locations, right? So if one just ends up being bone dry, no elk, no sound, no nothing for part of your hunt, I don't know what that might be for you, but you know, a couple of days in an area and you're just not turning up anything, you haven't bumped any elk, you haven't heard any elk, there's no fresh sign around, and you weren't able to get trail cameras in there, it's time to try another spot and make sure that you have multiples of those to fall back on and try, and just keep working through it until you find the elk. When you come up with those 5 areas, make sure you tag each one A through E and prepare notes on things like your wind approach and the thermals and how those are going to affect each of those terrain features in that area. Make sure that you print maps or you download them offline. Phones die, batteries freeze. Old school paper a lot of times as a backup can save your hunt, even if you keep it in the truck, you know, and have to go back and get it. You also want to try to scout pressure. Use forums, past kill maps, trail access points, talk to game and fish biologists. If everyone parks at the same trailhead, go deeper or go in from a different point, even if it's more challenging or through some nasty country. E-scouting is the discipline part of hunting. If you fail there, if you don't spend any time doing it, don't blame the elk. They might have been there and you weren't ready. Here's what separates average hunters and killers in the elk game, and it's studentship. Every failed stalk, busted herd, quiet basin that you can't find elk in can teach you volumes if you're humble enough to learn it. Be open to those learning experiences even when they don't turn out the way that you had hoped. Every interaction with elk gives feedback, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people ignore it, or it has to hit them in the face 10 times before they're like, oh, that's why the elk are doing this, or oh, that's why I keep bumping them and this keeps happening. So here's a few more action steps for you to get better. Journal every elk encounter. Note the time, wind behavior, terrain, your approach, what went right, what went wrong. Try to build a pattern over time. Record the vocalizations. Record your session between you and the elk, even if you don't get the elk on video. Film and review those bugling patterns. What got a response? What shut the elk down? Slow down and try to observe more. Spend more time glassing and watching elk, not just hunting them. I'm often asked why my son Saxon and I spend so many days every year videoing and photographing elk. Yeah, we love to see those cool animals. You know, we get to see some pretty darn cool things out there. We see really big bulls. We also get to see more elk behavior and hear more elk vocalizations than most hunters will ever experience through a lifetime of just hunting. So we learn a ton. Try to observe your thermals. Shade and bedding areas, escape directions. Where do they go after you bumped them? They might do that again if you bump them in that area again, or you could be prepared for other hunters to bump them and you could be up near that escape route. Or when they do escape, you'll have a better idea of where you might want to go after them and try to get on them, you know, maybe later in the day or that evening, right? So after every trip, try to journal and debrief these types of things. What went right and what failed and why. I know that as soon as I said the word journaling, there were a heck of a lot of dudes out there that were like, this sounds silly, man. And that's okay, because killing elk every year, it isn't for everybody. Now, a hunting 101 kind of tip. If you ignore everything else today, hear this, new hunters. The wind is the single most important factor in elk hunting, period. Once you're out there amongst them, you have to play the wind. It's a non-negotiable. You have to understand how that wind works. If you're sketchy on how that wind works, again, I've got videos. I'll link to them in the description. Check out the video, make sure that you understand wind and thermals before getting out there so that information comes to mind as you're walking through, side hilling, coming over the tops of ridges, whether you're going to approach elk from below or above. You want to understand the wind and the thermals. If the elk smell you, I promise the game is over, no matter how good your calling or your camo is. Now, here are a few action steps you can work on for learning thermal behavior. Cold mornings. Understand that means downhill thermals, right? Once the sun starts to warm things up, if the sun starts hitting a slope, that means there's going to be uphill thermals. The wind, the thermal is going to start to rise. If it's overcast, a lot of times you're going to be finding that wind is swirling and it's a lot more unpredictable. So pay attention to that cloud cover. Always test the wind. Use the puffer, the wind checker powder all the time. Check it every 50 to 100 yards while you're trying to move. Also, plan your route backwards, right? So start with where you expect elk to be, then plan a wind-safe approach, right? We don't just want to walk around randomly. I can tell you from personal experience, it's a good way to bump a bunch of elk. As you're hiking around, use your terrain as cover, not just visual cover, but scent cover, right? Staying over the top of a ridge until it's time to peek over, understanding when you peek over, you don't want to be right above the elk if the thermals are carrying down. And another caveat to this is make sure that you're not afraid to back out if the wind turns or things aren't right. I've tried to push it too much in the past, and it usually never ends up working out for me. It's just really hard to beat that wind if you don't follow the basic rules. If the wind switches, retreat. Live to stalk another day. The difference between a blown stalk and a filled tag is often one careless step in a bad wind line. So respect that wind or you're going to be walking out empty. Last but not least, we all love gear, and I can't get enough of it. I've tested it, reviewed it, packed it to the ounce. But the one thing most new elk hunters are missing, it's not boots, it's not optics, it's grit. And you can't buy it. When the weather turns, animals go quiet, and your legs are trashed, your success comes down to who can keep going. Here are a few action steps you can take to prepare. You've got to simulate hardship. It goes back to the beginning of this conversation. Train in bad weather. Sleep outside before the season starts. Go on hard hikes with no rewards, right? That are you're just boring out there grinding in the heat or cold. It's about mental reps. You can't possibly get really good at anything without lots of time spent doing it. There are a lot of people that say you need at least 10,000 hours of doing something specifically before you can get good at that specific thing, right? Probably a minimum. Mr. B says you need 100,000 hours to learn how to make good videos. That's a lot of time, folks. So it's never too early to get started on getting those mental reps in and work on getting good at suffering. You've got to visualize discomfort. You've got to visualize exhaustion and setback and how you'll respond to it. Practice positive self-talk. This is the part that makes me better. Pace your energy. Don't burn out in the first 2 days. Hunt to outlast, not outblast. It's not a race out there. Have a why deeper than the antlers. Your purpose is going to fuel your grit. Why are you out there? Know what you're really chasing. The challenge, the growth, the wildness, getting away from the city and all of our modern society hassles and stresses. It's not just inches of bone. Your best piece of gear, it's between your ears. Toughness isn't macho. It's refusing to quit when everything says you should. That's backbone. That's why I founded Backbone Unlimited. So, new hunters, those are the 5 lessons I'd hand deliver to every new elk hunter. not just so you tag out, but so you last long enough to enjoy your hunt and become consistent at creating opportunities, because opportunities are fun. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be, special, but you do need to be prepared. You need to be humble, and you need to be tough as hell when it counts. If this video helped you, do me a favor. Drop a comment with the lesson that hit you the hardest, something that you appreciated from what I delivered today. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Share this with another new elk hunting buddy of yours. And be sure to check out our membership page over at backboneunlimited.com. Would love for you to join our team. Hunt hard, hunt prepared, never settle.